I'm John Burlingame. It is September the 20th, 2010, and we are here with Bill Conti for an interview for the Archive of American Television in Los Angeles, California.
Hi.
Okay, Bill Conti, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure.
I want to just take a few minutes at the very beginning here to get a little bit of background on you, where you were born, a little bit about your education, that sort of thing. First, what was your name at birth?
William Conti, Providence, Rhode Island, 1942. Sorry.
More specifically, date.
April 13, 1942, Providence, Rhode Island.
And what was your father's name?
His name was also William. He was born Guglielmo. That was, if you say what was the baptized name, he was Guglielmo, but it was William, yes.
And your mother?
It was Lucetta. Lucetta is what they called it, Lucetta Conti. Both of them were born in America. My grandparents, of course, were born in Italy.
And what did your mother and father do for a living?
My father was a musician and a graduate of the Rhode Island School of Design. So he was kind of Renaissance-y in that he was a fine pianist and played piano professionally and taught piano all his life. But by commission, he would do a sculpture or an oil painting. He died young. He died around 50 years old. So he didn't have a career, let's say, that he did so many things that there are his works of art and there are his pupils in music.
Did your mother work?
My mother worked after he died. Yeah, and they could all play the piano for some reason. I never knew. Is this something that we should interrupt?
Okay, you were saying about your mother.
My mother, Lucetta, played the piano, and I didn't know that until later in life. All of a sudden, after one meal, she went to the piano and played for no reason at all, and I never knew that she could play, because everyone else could play. For example, after a meal, my grandfather and my father would take a libretto of a piano vocal of an opera, and one would take the female roles, and one would take the male roles, and they'd sing through the opera. So in my beginning, I heard my grandfather and my father singing these operatic things just horribly at the piano from beginning to end. So my recollections of music around the house, of course, it was ubiquitous. Everyone, my grandfather played the trumpet. He played the trumpet in those horrible Italian bands that Fellini made famous, right? But he did. He played that. My father, of course, was a fine pianist. But when they got together, it was always music, and it just seemed like I didn't have a choice. I had a choice. But when you grow up in that environment, it wasn't special. It was what you did.
So when did you decide, well, let me back that up. When did you decide you wanted to play an instrument and become involved?
Yeah, so the choice kind of went like this. Of course, you're playing or practicing piano at 5, 6, 7. That's the natch. You've got to do that. Why? It's like breathing. Everyone else does. That's what you're going to do. I kind of brought that tradition to my two daughters, who, when they said, well, we're going to school and we're taking piano lessons, I say, I care nothing of geography. In our tradition, you learn music. Now, you don't have to do music. As a matter of fact, one of my daughters is a doctor of psychology. Another one is a fine cook. Now, going back to me at 5, 6, 7, 8, so I grow up and I end up in Providence, Rhode Island. My father has a heart attack, and we moved to Miami, Florida, and this is in the 50s. I'm playing piano, always playing piano, and in high school, I actually substitute for him. Someone calls for a pianist. My father's a pianist. He doesn't work at night anymore, but he says, I'll send my son. So I began working 7 nights a week at 14 years old in a saloon at Miami Beach. But I was in high school at the same time, and the caveat was you can keep the job as long as your grades are fine in school. So my grades were fine in school, so I worked from 9 to 3. And then at 8 o'clock, I went to school and did what I did. So my career began like that, but it began like sort of. It's what I did, it's what I always did. And then one day, my father sat me down when I was a junior and said, well, what do you intend to do with what's going on? What are you going to do? And I said, well, we're in the Eden Rock, and we're going to move to the Fontainebleau. I was talking just like that. And he says, well, if that's your ambition, and it's fine, but why don't you just move out of the house and get your own apartment then? Now, we were very close. We were not adversarial at all. He was, as a matter of fact, the mentor who could play Liszt, Beethoven, and jazz. He could do that. Any questions I had, he could answer musically and of course, on life. So when he said that, I began, you mean, he said, well, you come in at 4 or 5 in the morning, you could stay out, your mother doesn't have to do your laundry, you'd be totally independent. So some kind of a shakeup. No, it was as if he punched me or something, which he didn't physically do. Anyway, I figured I'd go on to school. Oh, my education should continue in music, rather than thinking at 16, 17 years old, I'd reach the epitome by playing in a nightclub, which is okay to play in the nightclub. This Bob Newhart joke, this is terrible. He says, I don't like country and western music, but I don't want to denigrate the people who do like country and western music. And for the people who like country and western music, denigrate means put down. So he had to put him down through explaining what denigrate means. So there's nothing wrong with your profession. My father thought maybe I should do more with music than play in the saloon. Then I felt that someone should pay for that education. So my high school teacher said, if you played a double reed instrument instead of the piano, because you're a fine pianist, but when you go to audition to get a scholarship on piano, there'll be like many kids who can really play the piano like you. But if you played a double reed instrument, that would be an oboe or a bassoon that no one wants to play. I could get you a scholarship like that. So I said, give me that bassoon. Bassoon is that long instrument with the little pipe sticking out, and there's a double reed, that thing. When I played it, ducks came over. It was like a duck call. However, for my senior year in high school, I practiced and practiced and practiced so that I could really, as a senior in high school, play this thing. And I auditioned, now for scholarships. And I got one offer from the University of Miami, one Louisiana State University, and one Indiana. Miami was at home. I was a graduate of North Miami Senior High in 1959. But that meant staying at home. It snowed in Indiana. I was from Rhode Island. I remember snow. So I went to LSU. I went to Louisiana State University for 4 years. And it's also where I met my first wife. And only because we live in Los Angeles do I call her my first wife, because we've been married 45 years. But we were both 19 years old when we met. She was a dancing girl, ballet girl, at the football shows. When the girls come out and throw the capes and dance around. And I was a scholarship student in the band department, working with the band. Now, a scholarship student on the bassoon meant you played everywhere, in every little function. And the band, the marching band that goes out on the field, did not march bassoons. They're fragile little instruments. So the band director, I had to do something because I was a scholarship student. So he says, you better pick an instrument to be out there. So I thought, I don't know, tuba piccolo, and I picked the piccolo. So for the first year, I marched around. I taught myself enough to play the piccolo. And then when I was a junior, I met my wife, who was the dancing girl, right? And meanwhile, I'm playing 7 nights a week. We begin in North Miami Senior High at 14 years old with this nightclub replacement for my father. And I think I'm really hot, because 14, 15, 16, he knocks me down. That's what you want to do, is play in the saloon. I go to LSU, and I get hooked on music. Because when you said, what was your decision? I never made a decision until. In other words, by playing, if somebody's bagging potatoes at Ralph's and making a nickel, I'm working at a piano bar on Miami Beach, looking at waitresses that should be my mother, my younger mother. I had a car immediately. In other words, I thought I was really hot. So when I got to decide to, all right, maybe I'll do more with music, I got this silly bassoon scholarship. I'm sitting in the middle of the orchestra. In the middle of the orchestra, you start hearing everything. Not from a piano player's perspective. It's like music. All of a sudden, music starts working on me. Not as if I didn't like it. It was like, it now, instead of a choice, it was a calling. Meaning, I played piano because everyone played music. I could make money because, and I did it with music because it was natural, it's what I did. But the actual say, oh no, I want to know more, came from a calling that says, I got to know more. So then I auditioned for the Juilliard School of Music in New York.
And was this, you graduated from LSU and you went straight to Juilliard?
Yes. So 59, I graduated from North Miami Senior High. 4 years at LSU for the undergraduate. I was a double major. I was piano, I was composition. And I met my future wife, let's say, as in the junior year. I auditioned and realized that I should really do more. Juilliard has a fine reputation. Auditioned, was accepted, went to Juilliard for 2 years, got married after 2 years. She came, and I went to Juilliard for 4 years. In other words, I slowed down everything. And I was working 7 nights a week, Midtown Manhattan. There's no question about it. I'm still a saloon piano player, but now I have a bachelor's degree. And by the way, I have another bachelor's degree at Juilliard because I'm in no hurry to leave. I'm absorbing as much as I can. And when they said, what did you want to do? I wanted to write dramatic music. I knew of the kinds of music out there. I had friends, and still have friends, who are on the faculty at Juilliard that have chosen to write the other kind of music, real music. I wanted to write dramatic music. I wanted someone to pay for it, and I wanted to get rich.
Not necessarily in that order. But why dramatic music?
Opera. Remember, my grandfather, my father, after dinner, they'd take Tosca. Somebody'd sing Tosca, somebody'd cover those. They'd go through the entire opera. From 3 years old, I heard this. 4 years old, 5 years old. Dramatic music was, and then you were taken to opera. And then you'd hear this beautiful music, and what I think is beautiful music, and it just took over me. So if I was going to write music, and I felt I wanted to write music, I wanted to write dramatic music. Where can you write dramatic music and make a living? Now you have to get to a Baroque concept, meaning Bach wrote music for a living. Now a classical music concept. Mozart wrote for a living. We can't talk about the Romantic area when Beethoven and Tchaikovsky, they are artists. Mozart was not an artist in that sense, a romantic artist. He was a working composer, as was Bach. Today, how can you do that? Film and television. Can you live on Guggenheim grants? Some do, maybe. But you'd have to also be a professor someplace, which is another noble profession, a teacher. But if you wanted to just write dramatic music and get paid for it, I had no other choice. You have to be in film and television, where they make dramatic music. So I studied that, and only that, at Juilliard. I had no intention of doing anything else except that. On an offhand moment, my major teacher at the time, Hugo Weisgall, Vincent Persichetti were there, Elliott Carter, Luciano Berio, many names of the time, the early 60s when I was there.
And you studied with all these guys?
Yes, sir. At 60, I graduated LSU in 63, right? So then I did 4 years at Juilliard. So offhandedly, my major teacher says, I am the composer in residence at the American Academy in Rome. Why don't you come visit me and visit your roots? So I go, oh, yeah. I could do that. I mentioned it to my parents. We'll join you. In the summer, we'll come over. They'd never been. My father went in the war, during the war, Second World War. He had traipsed through Europe, but that didn't count in terms of the grandparents are from Italy. It'll be wonderful. The teacher goes with 27 hand-carrying suitcases, my wife's silly French poodle. We went on a boat to Italy. In New York, you park your car on the street. When my wife came in, she says, "Where did you park the car?" This is one day. I said, "I sold the car, and I bought 2 one-way tickets to Rome. We're going to go live in Rome." So we did. I had $200 in my pocket. After the tickets, we had everything we owned, and we got on the boat, and we went to Rome. The teacher was there, of course. Now, the teacher only meant come see me, hang out, whatever. And I needed a job. Now, I played piano on the boat going over. From 14 years old to 28 years old, I worked 7 nights a week in a saloon. So I get to Italy, and I'm walking down the Via Veneto. The Via Veneto is one of the main streets. It's Rodeo Drive. It's wherever you are. It's the hot street. And a man comes up to me, obviously a pimp. "You want a woman?" And he says it in your language because he looks at your clothes. He immediately knows what language he should use. He says, "Oh, no, please." I speak no Italian. The waiter, my wife on the boat over says, "Ask the waiter for some butter, please." I says, "Waiter, butter." She says, "No, ask him in Italian." I says, "I don't speak any Italian." So second night, same little guy. "Woman, you need a woman?" I said, "No, I don't want a woman. I need a job. I play piano." "Really? Come with me into a saloon." I do a set, play the piano. Guy says, "I give you 3,000 lira." That's $5. $5 a night. I'm working in Midtown Manhattan. I make $50 a night. This is the 60s, right? I says, "Well, thank you very much." And he says, "Let's try someplace else." So we go someplace else. I do another set, another saloon. There's piano bars. And the guy says, "I'll give you 2,000 lira a night." So I stayed in this one place. I went back to the first one and took my $5 a night. We stayed there for 2 years. The story could become endless, but we lived in Rome. I went from my little saloon piano playing. I was the hottest guy there, of course. My daughters were born there. I have 2 daughters that were born in Italy. I directed Hair in Italian and toured it for a year. Many Sanremo festivals, 30 albums or so as an arranger, living in Milan. My wife wouldn't go to Milan, so I would work in Milan 5 days a week, take the train back to Rome, and I stayed at the Grand Hotel in Milan. Now, the Grand Hotel is right near the famous La Scala Opera House. It's on the same street. It's right there. And after 6-7 months of 5 days a week in Milan, I come into the Grand Hotel, and I have an apartment there. I have a room. And the concierge says, "Oh, Maestro Conti," he says, "we had to give your room away because there's a convention in time. But we've moved you to another place. It's okay." So I was immediately irate because it's genetic. You have to do that. I was screaming and yelling, and the little busboy took me to this other place, down this little corridor in the Grand Hotel, which I'd never seen, and I'd been there. And I had worked in the ballroom where the piano was to do my arrangements. There was no... So at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, a little bitty light, trying to do my arrangements in the cold, these horror stories, right? So he takes me down this corridor, opens up these little bitty French doors, and I see in this room a little piano and a bed, a little bed. Everything is like pristine. And I say, "I've been here for all these months, and you have a room in this hotel that has a piano in it? How could you do that?" He says, "Maestro, this is the room where Giuseppe Verdi died. Buonanotte." And he left. Now, growing up as a student, and as a student of opera, when Giuseppe Verdi died, he died like General Franco. He died forever. He lay dying. The people in the streets of Milan covered the horses' hoofs because by that window no one should interrupt the maestro. And of course he died in that room, and I knew that. That's a parenthetical story. I mean, did I sleep? Of course not. What did I do? Nothing. I was there. I was like mesmerized. At a certain point, I do a movie. I'm sitting in Venice, Piazza San Marco, drinking a cappuccino. And this friend of mine, was married to a singer. Now, I had toured with singers throughout Europe. Burt Bacharach had toured with singers throughout Europe prior to my, I don't want to say generation, because he's probably 10 years before me, was in Italy, as Henry Mancini had done recordings at RCA in Italy maybe 10 years before me, being there. Okay. So he says, this friend of the singer, who is also a producer, says, Bill, would you like to come back to Venice and spend a month here to be the Italian music supervisor on a movie called Bloom in Love? I said, why not? So I did.
And that's an American film.
Bloom in Love, Paul Mazursky, Susan Ansbach, George Siegel. American crew comes in. They introduce the Italian crew. I'm working with the Municipal Band of Venice, the little street people too, because it's music scenes all over the place. And after 2 weeks of shooting in Piazza San Marco in Venice, the Italians are over here, the Americans are over here for some reason. And after every meal, Paul would come over with his translator to tell the Italians what we're going to shoot after breakfast and after lunch in the afternoon. This one particular afternoon, he comes over, he's looking for me, and he can't find his translator. So he comes to me and he says, Bill. He says, Bill, because when I was introduced, the Italian says, this is Bill Conti. So Paul says, Bill, at 2 o'clock, I need the musicians. And he says, do you understand? I shook my head. It was perfectly clear to me. He says, at 2 o'clock, I need the musicians to do scene 241. I says, but you understand? I says, yes. He says, do you speak English? I says, yes. Where did you learn how to speak English? I says, Providence, Rhode Island. I was born there. So he fell on the floor because he couldn't believe that he was speaking to me for 2 weeks through an interpreter. I had no reason to. Anyway, we did the Bloom in Love. The children who were born in Italy were growing. They should see their grandparents. We take a trip back to the States to show the grandparents the children. Children about 3, 4 years old. My wife is in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So we go to the Louisiana, and she says, why don't you go out to see those people you met in Venice? I said, wonderful, rather than staying in Louisiana. I came out here. They actually took me I was going to the still photographer on Bloom in Love. I was going to sleep on his couch. I'd made a phone call. And he lived on, at the time, Citrus Avenue. Now, for people that don't know, Citrus Avenue has the right side of the street and the wrong side of the street. Now, you can't politically say that, but there's poor people and rich people everywhere. So I came by train to Union Station, and the bus took me to Citrus, where the rich people live. And my friend came pick me up because I made a phone call from some maid saw me outside, and went to Citrus Avenue and slept on his couch, and was in contact with Paul Mazursky. And I got hooked. I saw a session. I saw a recording session at Burbank Studios, and it was amazing to me. Now, I had been working in Italy as an arranger, but I was also a ghostwriter. I wrote for many Italian movies.
And this would be in the late 1960s?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I had recording experience. In other words, I knew about recording in Italy, in France, in England. I had recorded in other places, but I'd never seen, and I'm an American, graduate of the Juilliard School. I had never seen an American recording session, like when I walked into the Burbank studio and they passed out the music. and the musicians simply played it.
Before we go on, though, I want to clarify. When you say you were a ghostwriter for Italian composers
That's correct.
in movies, what did that entail?
So the composer
Of record.
that had the movie to do, when he knew that you were a competent person, meaning a ghostwriter, you were called an arranger or an orchestrator, but you were brought in and you were given they didn't have detailed descriptions of the scenes like we have here, but they did have an explanation of the scene and how many minutes it was. And they'd pay you, in my case, it was 50,000 lira a minute. Now, 50,000 lira was not, if $5, if 3,000 lira was $5, this wasn't $100 per minute. And you would get no other instruction. You would see the scene and you would write it, and you would be paid and orchestrate it. And as a matter of fact, I even played on the piano because that was one of the conditions that you should hire me too, so I could make some money as a piano player.
So this is basically where you got your sort of
All of
first
it.
hint
All
of
of it was-
writing for film.
All of my technical languages, in terms of film, the montaggio, is all in Italian. When I came here in 1973, and Paul Mazursky offered me the score to Harry and Tonto in 74. He asked me during a New Year's Eve party at his house, and my boat tickets, we came with the children, remember, to show the grandparents. 6 months turned into a year. Boat tickets only last a year. We were going back on January 3rd. On December 30th, he said, I'd like you to do the score to Harry and Tonto. And I said, baby, we have to turn in the tickets. We're staying. So I think I made $7,500 on Harry and Tonto, which was not enough. She got a job, my wife, as a secretary at KHJ TV. And we began our Los Angeles period. Everything we owned was in storage in Rome because we made a phone call. I have to stay and do at least one movie. This is after 6 months of seeing the great level of musicianship and engineering and just the American way. I can actually say that prior to having worked in America. Everything I knew was in foreign terms, but it was great here, and I had to work one picture. Paul offered me the Harry and Tonto. I says, I got to stay. I got to do another picture. It was one of those moments. So I put everything I owned in storage. The car that was on the street, and it eventually got stolen. The dog was given away to someone else. And now the cutter, the film editor on Harry and Tonto. I'm living on the couch of the still photographer of Bloom in Love, who is also the still photographer that's going on Harry and Tonto. He has a piano in his things. I'm going to Chicago. They're shooting Harry and Tonto. What's it about? It's an old man and a cat. Give me some music. What? Just play something into the recorder. Well, I can't do that. I didn't even know the story. It's an old man and a cat. What do you need to know? I went like this. He gave it to Richard Halsey, who is the film editor on Harry and Tonto, who, when running dailies, when running the day's shoot, scenes that are just as exciting as they might be, are kind of dry in terms of, cut, do it again. He ran music, this little cassette recorder of my little piece of music underneath these tender scenes. And Paul fell in love with that, eventually asking me to do Harry and Tonto, and eventually saying, why can't that be the theme? Paul, was just an improvisation on an old man and a cat. He says, I like it, though. So that was the theme. I had to take it down, meaning I didn't remember what I did. I just did it spur of the moment. Then I was remembering and writing it down so it could be the theme. So the film editor on Harry and Tonto went to do a little movie with a director named John Avildsen, who had just done Joe. And he was doing WW and the Dixie Dance Kings with Burt Reynolds over at 20th Century Fox. Come meet him, in the Hollywood way. The Hollywood way is no more than the normal way. You should know everybody in your business. You should get to know everybody. No matter if you're an electrician, you have to join a union to meet other electricians. Why not? You're an electrician. What are you going to do? Hang with a plumber? He's not going to give you a job. You need an electrician. If you're in Hollywood, yes, they make a big thing about it that you should know and network. So I did. You have to. Everyone should, by the way, if they intend to have a career in anything. So I meet John Avildsen. Oh, isn't this great? I love your movie. How could I not? So I prepare the score to WW and the Dixie Dance Kings on cassette at home, and I bring it in, and they put it to the movie, and we do the timings, and we did everything, and they picked, the studio didn't want me, they picked another composer to do that. Okay, that's fine. I've learned to give it away, meaning I have the concept of knowing my truth. At some point, I was living a lie. In the middle of this Roman period, when I discovered at 28 years old that I was living a lie with a family of 4, I quit the nightclub forever. I don't know how I could just not forget or just casually throw off the second most dramatic moment in my life. When I stood up in the club, I said, I quit. I'm never coming back again. And I began ghostwriting for other composers. Because there was no work. I mean, I had to do something. And I was the composer for the first time in my life at 28 years old. After doing all those years in nightclubs, playing piano. I was a good piano player.
So to go back then to mid-1970s Hollywood, you met John Avildsen, but you don't get the job
I don't get the
WW.
job. They got someone else. But that's that same team, John Avildsen, Richard Hall, said, go to do a little movie called Rocky.
This is around 1975?
This is around 1975. It comes out in 1976. The star of the movie, Talia Shire, is married to a film composer who, for one reason or another, I don't know the reason, does not do that. Little movie that she's the star in.
But this time, the studio accepts you.
No, it's offered to someone else. He turns it down. And then John and Richard remember the guy that gave it away. Why don't we ask Bill? And it was a $25,000 package deal. You pay for everything, the musicians, the music, the tape, the engineer, and then you get the
Whatever's
rest.
left.
Well, remember, on Harry and Tonto, I got $7,500. So my agent asked for $8,000 on Rocky, and they said, well, it's a package deal. So I took the package deal, and I made $15,000 because in one 3-hour session, we recorded the score to Rocky. Over on McCadden Place, what was the name of Army's studio? You walked up. My wife is a secretary at KSJ. I say, do you know anyone that sings there? Does anybody in the office sing? Yeah, there's a couple of people. Bring them over. Gonna fly now. It's my wife and the people at KHJ who are singing on the tape.
This is a really low-budget operation.
Well, don't forget, Rocky was under $1 million. It was $900,000. This was a $25,000 deal. John Avildsen says, are we going to see the movie while we record the music? I said, we can't. I can't afford to pay a projectionist. And so everything was like, here's the music, play it. Did you like it? Because we're moving on. We move on. And we moved on. And one of the producers said, well, what are you rolling that tape for? There's 2 ways of recording. At least in those days, you could record on 35 millimeter perforated magnetic tape. That means that it goes synchronous through a machine that is perforated, the same way the film is perforated and goes through a mechanism, and that keeps it in sync. It's a mechanical sync. There's perforations both on the film and on the magnetic tape. And that's to record music is all you need. But we had 16-track recording in 1976, and I paid extra for that. Because when I said the album, everyone said, what album? And they walked out of the room. Didn't stay for the sessions. So we recorded it. I took another movie in Germany and went to Germany to do the movie. Meanwhile, Rocky comes out. My wife said, remember that little fight movie that you did that she wouldn't go see because it's a fight movie? I said, I think it's doing business. I said, good, I'm glad. So I come back from Germany, and all of a sudden I say, well, Maynard Ferguson has a big hit on Gonna Fly Now. I go, anybody want the original? Yeah. Then I renegotiated some points. So the original came out. So everything after Rocky, of course, is a different story. The long-winded version to get you from zero to Rocky took what it took. But everything from 76, when Rocky came out, and then the money came in 77, but the reputation began, if there is a reputation. Because even a bad reputation, you know, I want the publicity, good or bad. In other words, you know one until you had something. So I had that little something, the Rocky thing, that began a career. I had a career before, but you needed something.
And this was a career on a different level.
This is now a different career on a different level.
Of course, you got an Academy Award nomination for Gonna Fly Now.
And I was asked to conduct the Academy Award show in 1977. And someone said, I want the guy that did Rocky. Now, the Academy Awards show as a musical conductor is unique. I don't want to do 20 minutes. Maybe I'll do 10 minutes about that. But I was asked, and the agent says, can you do that? Now, I had conducted all throughout Europe. I'd never done a show like that. No, that's true. But I was certainly not a novice musician. I had 2 bachelor's and a master's degree. I kind of knew music. And in Europe, there was no click tracks. You conducted everything. So I was an okay conductor. So I go to Universal, and William Friedkin, who is the producer of the show, has a big office in Universal, one of those great offices. People that don't know, we have great offices. Some of them are really great. Dino De Laurentiis, when he had Greystone, when you walked into the Dino De Laurentiis office, it was like, it was embarrassing. It's like the Vatican, you know, when a guy would come from some country, wherever his little country was, when he walked into St. Peter's to meet one little man, whether you thought he was cool or not, you walked us up the steps to St. Peter's, all the way walking. So there's one of these offices at Universal. Mr. Friedkin will see you now. The thing's got, and he punches a cassette player at his desk, and it's playing the little Gonna Fly Now Rocky tune, and he claps, embarrassingly through the whole song, which is like about 3 minutes. Just he's there. It probably took me a minute just to walk down to where he was. He says, can you do this show? I says, you bet. Not being a shy guy. And that was the end of the meeting. That was it. Now there were going to be meetings, but that was my meeting to be the musical director.
But why did you want to do this?
Do you remember my father singing opera? Now, opera is a live performance. And live performance is where the emotion happens. In other words, when music happens, it's the ultimate fantasy. You make of it what you want. It goes in your ears. You go, ooh, but it's an aesthetic experience. It's not thinking. When someone says, do you like that music? I don't think, there ain't no thinking. It comes over me. It's an awe. James Joyce talks about that in the Portrait of an Artist of a Young Man. It's awe. It's not kinetic. You don't want to own it. You don't want anything to, it's the sunset. You go, ooh, ah. So music is that. How do you do that? If you get it right, if you get into the music. When musicians are playing, they're going, ooh, ah, ooh, ah. The guy who's conducting it, if he gets lost in it. Now, how can you do that and reduce this down to a trashy, sometimes, long, always long, boring Academy Award show that I happen to love? Because it's live. There's over 110, 115 starts when you could be wrong.
110 or 115 starts, meaning individual pieces of music.
That's right. Every time the orchestra plays. In my day, if you change the format, that's okay. The format that began with John Green in the 50s, when the Academy Award show went to television. Prior to that, it's in some ballroom. And he played that too. He did that. But when it went to television, there needed to be a form. How do we do this? How do we have 5 different pieces of music? And when they say the winner is, you play the right one. Well, that way of doing it began with John Green. And so my tradition of doing the Academy Award show, whether you like it or not, is in that tradition. In the classic, this is how we do it.
Which is fully prepared individual pieces of music, each representing a nominee in multiple categories. Yeah.
in their film. So they say the winner is. If they say it's John Smith, but they don't mention the movie, we're lost. Out of Africa. So we're scanning for Out of Africa. And by the way, if John Smith is nominated in 2 roles because he's a costumer or John Smith in Out of Africa, not that one, this one. And then we play the music. So I think that's exciting. When you get that right, I go, ooh, ooh, ah. There's no money. It's a scale job. In other words, once you get beyond how much does it cost, how much can I get, then you're into the aesthetic of it.
As music director and also conductor, do you wear multiple hats at the Academy Awards? I mean, are you in charge of the arrangements? Do you write
Charge of
them
everything of the music, supposedly. Well, you're the musical person. You're the one.
But you're also conducting.
And you're also conducting. Now, the title, I say it in its purest form now. Other people have been musical directors who have not conducted. There have been people that get music credits that are less prepared than others, but their validity is not less. If a guy can hum a beautiful melody, it has validity because it moves someone, and who did it? He did it. He moved you with that beautiful thing. If I want to be the elitist that says, I can tear down Beethoven and I can, that's another conversation. That's not a musical conversation. The one that says music by, and he doesn't know very much, but he wrote those little melodies, I'm on his side.
But to go back to the Academy Awards, how long a process is it from the time you get the job to the time you're in the pit conducting?
So if a producer, there are varied producers, if the producer has a theme in his mind, I've worked with Gil Cates as a producer many times, and before him, others. But Gil would say, oh, let's salute women. Oh, let's salute comedy. Now, those have a theme to the show. And over the years, we've had thematics. But nothing is done until the nominees are out, because it's all about the nominees. It's not so much about the theme that's going to try to link everything, but who are the movies that we're going to do? So let's say, I remember talking to Madonna. Madonna is a singer. But some producers want the singer that sang it in the movie. Some producers to say the song is nominated, not the singer. We're honoring the song. And I want a different singer. So that's a subjective choice. But I would call a Madonna and say, we'd love for you to be a part of the program. Danette Herman, who is the talent coordinator, would have probably prepped that question too. But at some point, the musical director will say, as she said to me, it's so slow, can we do it differently? Yes, is the answer to every question. And then you continue down the road of making it fit her or the talent for the night.
How many Academy Awards ceremonies have you done?
19. Who's counting?
And by the way, you've won, I believe, 3 Emmys for your role as music director at the Academy Awards.
Perhaps.
And multiple nominations beyond that. Are there 3 or 4 interesting or memorable collaborations with singers or artists that?
Well, there's 2 moments that I could relate for posterity. I could say that, can't I? Posterity. Yes. One of them is Stanley Donen. This is kind of interesting. Stanley Donen was given the big award, and Stanley Donen is Singing in the Rain, famous director, musical director too, meaning of musicals, and he wanted to sing and dance a little bit during his presentation. And he was going to say a few words, but everything was going to be brief. But he thought it would be very charming, or I don't know what he thought, but it was a charming idea to do a little sing and dance. So he prepared a little sing and dance, some tune, I don't even remember. And he came to the rehearsal, and it was sing a little bit, time step a little bit, sing a little bit, and the whole thing maybe took 2 minutes. Then he said, thank you. Okay. Now, we only have this one rehearsal. It's not like we rehearse a lot. So this is the night of the show. And what I have to prep is, this was Titanic night, too, I think. So the orchestra can either be in a pit. The pit is, if the stage is here, the pit would be down here. the orchestra could be behind this on stage and hidden behind the people, or seen if they raised the curtain. Or in one case, I was at Capitol Studios, which was like
Across town.
across town from the Shrine Auditorium, and you're hooked up by microwave, whatever. So you don't have to be there. Now, here's something that you don't know, is that the musical director wears headphones, and he has a microphone. Well, he also has a script. He has the music, and I've mentioned there's like 110 to 115 times the music is going to be played. So it's not a little bit of music. You bring on a little bit of music at a time from big stacks of music. Then there's 2 video cameras. One of them has a 7-second delay. Then you have audio controls. Because in this ear, there's someone yelling and screaming. In this ear, there's someone else yelling and screaming different things.
Who are those people, by the way?
Director, of course. Then Celine Dion is singing. Well, he's got 16, 22 cameras. He's screaming and yelling, take 22, 4, 7, 6, go, wait. Now you want to lower him. Now you have audio controls. You want to lower him and raise Celine. Otherwise, you don't know what you're doing. Little rubato moments. So, script, music, audio controls, 2 video cameras, monitors, 7-second delays. Now, the little microphone on your head. Now, you have to talk to the director. It's a live show. Something happens. We can't find him. We're going to do something else. So he talks to you in your headphones. You have to talk back to him. So you don't have anything in front of you because you have a baton here and you're turning pages in audio and script and music. So you have a foot switch to step on to activate your microphone. The microphone can't be activated all the time. There's 50 musicians, in my case, blowing into everyone else's headsets, so we can't do that. So there's a little foot switch to step on. Now, when he says we're not going to do item 71, we're going to do item 73, I have to relay it to 50 musicians and 16 singers. They're wearing one little earphone to hear me say that when I depress the second foot switch. I say that. They get it. Then when my monitor goes out, I have to tell someone about that. So there's the engineering. So there's the third foot switch. I touch engineering. We just had some monitors go out. So to do it the way I do it is that. Now, Stanley Donen, I'm behind the stage. We can't see him except on the monitors with the 7-second delays. He starts to sing. He starts to tap dance. The audience goes berserk. Standing O, everyone's standing and singing. Now, his entrance, he just missed. The orchestra's going, Stanley's not singing. What are we going to do now? I'm into the monitor like you can't imagine. I am into the monitor. Stanley takes a deep breath. I hit my second foot switch. I said to the 75 people, measure 24 now. And they went now to measure 24, right with Stanley. And we ended the song. Now, no one at home knows that. No one in the theater knows that. Stanley knows that.
That's impressive.
That's a big deal. That's a memorable one for me. I mean, of the 19 times. I mean, there are stories, endless stories, but that's a good one.
And I want to get more, but I do want to just quickly ask you, the complicated technical process that you've just described, has it always been that way from 1977 on?
That's correct.
It has
John Green came up with, now, the idea of expanding the technology. Don't forget, in 50s, he probably was live, and they did it like a live show, and they just shot it. Now, when you say, well, you're going to be at Capitol Records, well, I need a video monitor. So now I need this. Now I have to talk to a director. I'm 10 miles away from the event. I show up in a sweatsuit. I take my bow with the tuxedo the day before at the Dorothy Chan. Everybody thinks I'm there. I'm like, drinking a coffee and smoking a cigarette while the show's going on. So I think technology has changed, but the form of how we do the music, John Green's way, hasn't.
So the Donen story is great. Are there other special moments for you through the years?
Well, the very first time I did it, because it's a very nerve-wracking show, and I mentioned this time we're in the pit. Now, we all file into the pit, meaning the musicians and singers. You go in the pit, and if you think it's a long, boring show in the audience or at home, if you're sitting there and you can't get out. And you're going to be playing constantly. When we go to commercial breaks and you go to the bathroom or the kitchen, we're playing. We play for the house, the people in the audience. So the very first time I did it, I asked John Williams. He's done it 4 times. Henry Mancini, he's done it 4 times. Elmer Bernstein, I think, has done it 3 times. So I've asked my compadres to get as much up as I can. I mean, how do you get through this thing? And they've told me what they could. But that night, when you're there, and what you can't have rehearsed, right before they go on, and they say, and the show will begin in 30, in 29, in 28, and in this era it's going in 7, 6. What? That's the delay. Don't go with that one. Go with the one on the 2, 1, live from Hollywood. Okay. The winner is 5 different ones. Get the right one. Now remember the cameras. Camera 3 is the tight shot. Then he's going to say music out. He's got 16 cameras. Ready 4, ready 10, ready 16, ready 4, ready camera 3, music out. That's the tight shot. Now what no one knows, and especially Julia Roberts.
Yes, I wanted to get to that.
Is that this is the hook. 110, 115 times we play, but taped to the music stand is this magic piece of music. That when you've been told at the nominees' luncheon, you have 45 seconds.
As to accept
you can
your
thank
Oscar.
anyone you want, but after 45 seconds, and especially, this is parenthetically what they don't tell you, if you're a little guy. There are always big people and little people. And if you're a little person, if you're not a star, let's be specific. If you're not, or even more specific, if you're not a big star, because you could be a minor little starlet, you're going to get hooked out of there. You'll get the yellow light, and you'll get the red, you're gone.
Do you get the yellow light at 30 seconds?
Here's the perfect way to do it. No, you don't get it at 30 seconds, you get it on a whim. This is the whim. In the booth, there's the network. Then there's the producer. Then there's the director. So this is the way it goes. Because I'm on the headsets. There's only 2 people that do this show. There's the director and me. Everything to do with the show. Your camera might be on, might be off, your lights, kill it. What? No, not yet. They're arguing. Maybe the network says, kill it.
Meaning cut the guy off.
Get him out of there. Producer says, no. Producer says, kill it. Network says, no, wait. Both of them say, get rid of it. Director says, Bill, get ready to kill him. I hit the portrait, we're killing him. Now, the perfect kill is like this. And then my 3rd grade teacher, and Mrs. Rabinowitz from music. And the music's little quiety music. Camera goes like this. Meaning, if you're on tight shot, all of a sudden, you're becoming an even little tinier person. Goes up to the house. And the music's getting louder, the mic, and it gets so high, then we're up on the next podium. And Billy Crystal comes out. Now, this person who is 10 feet from me hates me because he or she thought the music killed him. But in the booth, kill him! And that's when it's done nicely. So for some reason, I have been accused of cutting off people, and it's true.
But really, the decision is made in the booth.
Never mind. I'm a soldier.
Yeah.
I'm a soldier.
So there's this one particularly famous incident where you are being called out by a famous star on the podium accepting her Academy Award. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I believe that it was Cuba Gooding. No. Let's say that the Cuba Gooding moment was a fun moment because he played with it. He spoke over the music, and they didn't go up high. I kept playing, he kept doing. It was actually kind of fun. But to get in control of the moment, meaning we give the little bitty, I take that back. We give awards early, middle, and late. The awards, some of the awards that were given early, either big people or little people. I mean, because there were serious awards given throughout the whole evening. The early award was given, I believe this famous actress was sitting maybe 2 rows. famous people sit up front. Pretty people sit in the first row. So she might have been in the first row. But that means the proximity is, I'm here, she's there. I'm standing up, looking at the stage, she's sitting right behind me. I know that because when I killed that first act that was thanking Mrs. Rivera, music, she freaked out, got irate.
And by she, you mean?
That woman, that famous actress lady.
Julia Roberts.
Her. I heard that. I heard a commotion about that. And I looked, and it was her. Now, there was no exchange. There's no look. I mean, I'm sitting on top of these people. I'm standing here. They're sitting on top of me. And when she, fortunately for her, won, I think she was so emotionally involved with that first moment, and it was an actor or actress that got killed, that she asked me to put down my baton and take a seat, whatever she said. It was, and she did.
Referred to as a stick, I seem to recall.
Oh, a stick man. She
stick
called
man.
Me, yes. And she sent me flowers the next day.
Even though she had actually sort of kind of yelled at you from the podium.
Her boyfriend of the evening, I mean that respectfully, that evening she was with a male escort who happened to be in a movie that I had just done for Taylor Hackford. It was originally called Blood In, Blood Out, Bound by
Honor.
Bound by Honor.
Was, I think, the final title.
Final title. And he knew that I didn't do that. He knew and he had a conversation with her that I was also over, but she just couldn't. But the next day, I will say that she did it, and then
So she apologized by sending.
I didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
She sent me flowers, and she sent me a note explaining that she thought I would be as excited for her as she was, and I was. Then the next time she called me Tom Conti, who is a wonderful actor, an English actor.
This was in a subsequent awards year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then she sent me chocolates. Look, it's all in the context of fun, of course. I mean, how could anyone think anything seriously of any of this?
It is a classic, though.
But it's fun, yeah.
It is a classic moment in the history of the Academy Awards.
Almost not the David Niven moment, but...
Oh, the streaking year, yeah. Were you?
No, I wasn't.
Oh,
It was the year before.
Um,
So now I've gotten you to my television era.
And maybe it would be an appropriate moment to just take a break at this point.
Okay.
Because I think we